This episode was recorded before the death of Her Majesty the Queen. One of the seasonal themes we discuss is the archetype of the sovereign. I wanted to acknowledge the timing of this and express my respect for the late Queen Elizabeth II and for King Charles III.
So welcome, wisdom seekers. This is our Autumn Equinox episode of the Red Thread podcast. And it's actually been a whole year since we released the pilot episode. So I've got a real treat for the guest for you today. We're going to be talking about the themes of the season. Mabon is the pagan Celtic festival of the autumn equinox, and of course in nature she's wearing her most beautiful raiment of berries and deliciously coloured leaves, and so we're going to be talking about all of those themes and more besides, with our fabulous guest today, who it's an honour and a privilege to have her on the podcast. It's my teacher and mentor, Katinka Soetens, and she is Priestess of Avalon, Priestess of Rhiannon specifically, who we know, we've met Rhiannon before, is the goddess of love. Now, Katinka is also the co-creator of the Goddess Conference, which happens annually on the Isle of Avalon in beautiful Glastonbury. She is a founding member of the Temple of Avalon, which is, I think it's safe to say, the first, maybe the only pagan temple that honours both the god and the goddess in this earth-based spiritual path that we have. The way that I know Katinka is she's the director of the Path of Love Mystery School, which teaches the sacred mysteries of our indigenous spirituality in the Celtic and European lands. And she is the most delicious speaker. We're going to have such a lovely conversation today because she really leads goddess-loving men and women to reclaim their power. So welcome, Katinka.
Wow, thank you, Vanessa. And what a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. How wonderful that you're holding this podcast and that we get to share in this way.
Oh, well, I'm absolutely delighted to share at least a snippet of some of the teachings that I experienced as your pupil through my through my priestess training, and we'll get onto that soon. But I know you do so much other work out in the world as a priestess. So I really wanted to start with the themes of the season. Really, we're heading towards the autumn equinox. The weather has turned here in the UK, as we know. We were just talking about it. What does this season mean for you, Katinka?
Yes, it's the autumn equinox. I really like the equinoxes because there is points of balance in the year. It's really a reminder of the gateway between opposite polarities, where you can stand momentarily and meet these two as equals. So the equinoxes, both the spring and the autumn equinox, are very much the marks for that. To be conscious with that and to bring that into your daily life and your relationship fields. But also the equinox, the autumn equinox, is very much about we're really entering that dark part of the year now, where from now on the days are getting shorter than the nights and the nights longer until the spring equinox again. And so it is very much that beginning of introspection, the gathering of our treasures, of our harvests of this year, of the things we've planted and given our intention to. Also time to prepare the seeds for our new intentions, so very much linked, like you're saying, to what is happening in nature, to what is happening within our, if we live in kinship, in connection to the land, what would be our natural rhythm, in an agricultural sense, in a working with the seasons more intimately than we get to do when we're in our normal modern houses. And so then the season of Mabon, very much about the archetype of the sovereign one, of the queen, of the king, which is the kind of moving into eldership, but not quite there yet. Your full power, but no longer about creating new life in the form of babies. Really, what are your gifts and what are you able to receive from life? So there's a lot in this segment of the year. And it's a wonderful time to really feel grateful because, as you are saying, Vanessa, the world is, nature is so beautiful and is so abundant. It's in that gifting, in the beauty of sharing and gifting. And yes, so we need to look at the places where we go into hoarding. It's all for me, it's all for me, it's all for me. There is so much, it's all for me. Or there's not enough, therefore I need to have enough. Those places are really interesting to look at this time. And then, okay, so where's our generosity? That generosity of nature in all the colors, in all the gifts of the fruits. Yeah, how are we fruiting our generosity in our life? So a lot.
Yeah, there is a lot, and I love the daily reminders as I go outside, that nature is giving us those juicy fruits and lovely coloured berries. And I don't know if this is true, but I read somewhere that this was a time when kind of ancient communities, if they'd taken prisoners during kind of land conflicts in the year, they would release them, partly because they didn't want to feed them over the winter, but it is a time of releasing and letting go, and the leaves, the trees are letting go of the leaves, and there is a beauty in that we can see right in front of our eyes every day when we look when we look outside.
Yes, and I think again that talks into, whether that's true or not, I don't actually know, but into that generosity of spirit, but also the necessity of, okay, what is actually needed to get us through the hard time? Do we have to be in conflict? Do we have to be, in that others lesser making mode? And the letting go is very much associated with this time of the year on the great wheel of initiation, the wheel of Rhiannon, where you have the life stages on this overlapping solar wheel. This is the time of letting go. It's letting go of parts of your life that are over. For us women, it's a time of menopause. It's a time of midlife where you really get to feel the approach of the winter of your life, or you're closer to death than you are to the beginning of your life. And so there is this reassessing of what is important. What am I holding on to? What am I going to actually give my life force, life joy, energy to now? So that, I think it links in. We are part of nature. It is happening in us every year, every season, and over our lifetime. And so these festivals that you're making these podcasts around are really reminders of us, of how we can connect, how we can get the wisdom treasures, how we can get the gifts that we receive, but also offer ourselves from this place of generosity, particularly at this time of the equinox in the autumn.
It's that beautiful gratitude, isn't it, of being open-handed about giving and receiving, and having that in flow, really. And receiving the treasures, gathering the harvest, but also distributing and sharing. And
absolutely. I think it's that, build bigger tables to share if you have more, rather than hoard. That attitude, which is actually very much part of Celtic kinship amongst people. But also it's the time of the nuts. Yeah, the nut trees are giving their treasures, and that is life force, protein right there stored, that you can gather to have through the harder times of the winter, the less abundant outer time, the more richer inner time that is coming, that this is the beginning of that cycle of. So what do we do with these treasures? The nuts of wisdom, the hazelnut is the wisdom fruit of the European northern goddess. And so you have this whole thing of, here are literally her wisdom harvest for us to look at in your life. What is the wisdom harvest of this cycle, of this year for you, or of this part of your life for you?
Yeah, and you touched on, you mentioned introspection. This is a time where we start to step towards the darker time of the year, a time of introspection. And I've always loved this this feeling of this kind of sense of, yeah, what's my life come to so far, this cycle? And this happens naturally for me because it's my birthday season. So inevitably I'm kind of looking at, well, yeah, what's happened in the last solar year, you know, since my last birthday. And also the astrological sun sign of Virgo, the sign of the priestess. She's also a sign of discernment, so she organizes and orders things and releases what no longer serves, that, you know, that old phrase, but you know, what really is gone and not needed anymore.
Absolutely. It's a perfect time for taking stock. You know, we've come out of the summer, the busyness of summer, the holidays, the people not being in school or colleges or work breaks or whatever. And it's now back to those kind of more rhythmic forms of life for most people, not everybody, of course. And it's that taking stock of how are we going to go forward? And within our global society, as well as our national society, it is this time really to think, okay, in the slightly bigger picture than a personal life, yeah, what are we taking with us? What are we letting go of to compost so that something else may transform out of that, which can work on a relationship basis, which can work on your relationship to things in your life, yeah, whether that's your work, whether that's your friendship circle, whether that's your commitments. Are those commitments still relevant and still actually, do they have the true yes, your authentic yes? What are your healthy boundaries? You know, all this is part of the sovereign one, the queen, the king archetype, which is associated with this season as well.
I love that. I love that. And I'm going to pick up on something else that you said to kind of lead us into the next topic, because you talked about gathering the seeds. And of course, this is traditionally a time when we go back to school, and I've talked about that on my Facebook page, going back to school at this time of year. It's kind of like looking at the seeds of what you want to plant for next year, and I think this very much feeds into the cycle of the year that you follow, Katinka, with your work as a priestess. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the seeds that I'm really nurturing now is the start of the Priestess of Rhiannon training, which is the first year, starts in October, starts at the end of October here in Glastonbury in person again this year, which I'm so looking forward to, because though online has brought many gifts, it's just not the same. So I'm really looking forward to welcoming women into that training, because it is an amazing course that will really transform your life, work on some deep parts of integration in yourself, and hold that archetype of this time of the year, the priestess archetype. If that is a calling for you, then it's time to really see what love would do and how the path of love might give that priestess calling form. So that's really my main focus at this time of the year always. Plus, there's the planting of seeds of other courses, in particular abroad, you know, the organizing with my organizers. I'm very fortunate to have some amazing organizers abroad, of the planning of dates and the advertising of courses and all the admin stuff that has to happen. And also the whole online thing, because I am going to continue giving some online teachings, and also possibly some mixed group teachings. I am waiting for enough men to come to do the Brotherhood of Rhiannon again, which is the masculine cycle of this wheel of initiation. And that may become something online. I don't know. The in-person is so much better and so needed. So I really want to hold those seeds of intentions very close to my heart and to bring my womb energy to them so that they may actually germinate and grow and manifest. Because I think that there is, though online, like I said, has many gifts and many opportunities, there is, and some things work amazing, and I love it, the new gifts that have come in through this cycle. But really the seeds of returning in person are the most precious little treasures for me at this time.
And this is, of course, how I know you and how I've come to gather the treasure of my own priestess journey, because you are in your role as director of the Path of Love Mystery School. You deliver the Priestess of Rhiannon training. It's a 2-year cycle. It's fully accredited, and there are trainings that you can do beyond that as well, which I'm very much looking forward to when they begin again. And I took that journey. So I did 2 years. Some of which was online and some of which was in person, and it is absolutely life-changing. And the enrollment process really starts at this time of year.
Yes, it does. And it's, you can find all details on the website, which I know you will put on afterwards. But also, you can email me if you have any specific questions or concerns that you want to raise. I'm very happy to communicate, though I'm sometimes a little slow to get back on email. But yes, so those, and you did so well, as did all the women in your year, where we had to roll with the changes of the COVID period, of course. And so it's really my pleasure to teach. I love teaching in Europe. I love connecting to the lands and the different deities of Europe, because I feel myself very much to be a daughter of Europe. And I love her presence that gets the benefits through the teachings of Rhiannon for people everywhere, and particularly here in Glastonbury, because Avalon is a very special place. And to come here for a priestess training, particularly the Priestess of Love, Sacred Sexual Priestess of Rhiannon training, is very, very special. And so this is something that is just delightful to be planning again now for starting in October.
It's a very beautiful experience to be in Glastonbury, and of course that if anyone hasn't picked up the fact that Katinka also teaches in other places around Europe, because I know we have European listeners, so please do, I invite you to check out all of her offerings. The links will be in the show notes and various places where you can connect, as always, with our guests if you feel moved and something that they're talking about resonates with you.
Fantastic. And if you want to connect to Rhiannon as a deity, a Celtic deity of place, a sovereign goddess of Avalon, there are other sovereign goddesses of place as well, but she's particularly associated with the lands of Wales, but she has this sovereign goddess connection to Avalon as well. And so there are freebies on my website where there's like a visualization journey or some poetry or whatever to let you have a taste of her, and a greater explanation, more in-depth explanation of the whole wheel of the year, the wheel of life, and her houses of initiation, with the archetypes that we work with, both the shine enhancing archetypes that we initiate into, and the shadow forms that her dark mirror asks us to look at, so that we can actually become conscious of what rules us in our life.
So we've talked about your the Path of Love Mystery School and your love of teaching and initiating new priestesses of Rhiannon. I can feel the passion that you have for this role and this work in service, but it's not the only thing that you do. So tell us about the other kind of threads and strands that you weave in.
Yes, so I love working with men and women in couples or in separate groups or in mixed groups, really working with tantric practices and with the teachings of the Path of Love Mystery School to enhance relationship, love relationship, to enhance communication, intimate communication, to enhance authenticity. So I really enjoy giving workshops and teaching around that, but also holding sessions, which can either be in person, which can include sexual coaching, which can include talking sort of tantric therapy around how you can move through issues that often expressed within the sexual energy in a relationship, but that are usually also around something else. So diving into these places of discord and transforming them, changing them. I love that. And these sessions can be also online, which is really great. And then another one of my passions where I really get to priestess, get to hold space as a priestess with other people, with particularly a circle of sisters, because we are a cooperative who hold and create and keep open and manifest the Temple of Avalon, which you so kindly mentioned earlier. I don't think it is either the first or the only temple, pagan temple to the goddess and the god in some form, but it is a space in Glastonbury where both the goddess and the god are equally honored. And these are named and unnamed, and also have a space for the non-binary gendered forms of the divine. The center of our temple is really sacred union. And so this is a progressive move really that needs to happen in the world, or this is what I'm absolutely passionate about this. Yes, the divine feminine and her returning and her integration in everybody, that is vital in a world that's very patriarchic in all its religions and its forms of spirituality. So yes, and then how do we healthily actually create spaces where both these forms and the third, that is not of those forms, is actually given space where you can come and sit in their presence. So yeah, we work with some named goddesses and gods of Avalon, but also elemental forms, the seasonal forms of these deities of place, really. There are other places in town that do this very well. The White Spring in particular is very beautiful in this. However, this is a little room, a temple space. So it's open between 3 and 5 on weekdays and available for room rental if you have a small group or healing sessions or something like that.
And I've visited and we've had some sessions there. It's a beautiful space, a lovely energy, and I think, as you say, much needed in a world where traditional binary identities are now becoming much more, well, they always have been, but they're much more visibly fluid, and people are seeking places where they can be authentic and genuine and feel welcome,
absolutely,
in their uniqueness, and their kind of lived experience of that. And that's such a beautiful yes, so again, it's in the UK, it's in Glastonbury, but if you do have an opportunity to visit, I would very much urge you to go and experience that.
Yes, and it's a group of us, there's 7 of us in this cooperative, and we all do different bits, and I love holding space there, which I do actually only about once a month, but it is wonderful, a wonderful way of priestessing. Plus there's some seasonal celebrations that we're holding and open days. But for me, really, this is a form of my heart's journey as a priestess of Rhiannon, Epona as a sacred sexual priestess who walks the path of love, to really work with the ending of the inner violence against masculine, against feminine, between these two, this kind of competitive other as lesser making that is so prevalent, and then to bring it out actually in the real, not just on the inside, which of course is also very real, in the outer. And so one of the offerings I'm having online is the masculine wheel of the initiation archetypes of Rhiannon for women. And this is an amazing place where if you are already on a priestess path and you want to really, or if you're interested in the tantric practices of actually coming home to yourself, which are given a particular form, which in itself is literally just that, a lens to approach something with. But this is very beautiful in creating a compassionate and loving, wise ground from where you can enter any relationships with the masculine as a woman, whether that's your son, your father, your friends, your partner, your lover, whatever the relationships are, so that you change the narrative, the wounding narrative, the competitive narrative, the other and therefore not quite whatever narrative. So this, for me, the Temple of Avalon is very much, me personally, it's part of that. And so then the other thing I wanted to briefly mention is the Goddess Conference, which is just the most amazing international yearly goddess event where we gather together for a week or slightly less time, and we build this amazing pop-up temple that we get to be in together, have extraordinary ceremonies, goddess-based ceremonies. Everybody, all goddess-loving people, goddess-curious people are welcome. It's not just for women, it's for everyone. And we have for over the last 5 years really worked to increase and improve our diversity, our inclusivity. We are in a learning curve with that, like everybody else, but we're really working on that. That's part of our vision. And the core vision is really to manifest goddess in all her different forms, to celebrate her in different forms and in different years, and to undo some of the narrative we inherited that is, again, part of that other as lesser making, because really that is not the medicine of love that the world needs. So the Goddess Conference is an amazing event that I'm fortunate enough to be co-organizer of, together with my sister of my heart, Rhiannon van Eupen. But we have all sorts of circles. We're really into the circle work. We want to try and not be hierarchical, which is very hard in a hierarchical world where you have to get things done. But we have pillars in our teams, and we are working on this, creating circles of equals. And so this is a really exciting, it's quite radical in that sense, that if you want to come and experience something that's based on that, even if you're not particularly drawn to goddess, it's an interesting event to come to for those reasons. But we have just the most amazing times with wonderful performances, presenters, workshops, events out on the land, sacred ceremony on the land. It is the best, really. And this last year was themed for the sovereign goddess of Avalon. So very much in tune with this archetype of Mabon, of the sovereign one, the king for the masculine form, the queen, the sovereign one, also the dragon energies of the land that sing within us and connect us to the ley lines. It was just wonderful.
It sounds absolutely magical. I wasn't able to attend this year, but I've attended some of the online ones when it went online through lockdown, and it just the knowledge and passion and experience and leadership in itself is incredible. So again, you'll find links in the show notes, and I think it's fair to say that I think it's correct that you've still got online tickets available, even though it was at the beginning of August. The online content is still available.
That's right. And our Sovereign Goddess of Avalon online ticket, which is still available and which gives you access to all the contacts till the end of October. So plenty of, actually really good to get it now, so that you now have the time, when we're starting this new cycle, the fruits, the harvest, the treasures, and that you can gather them and have them for your evenings as the evenings are drawing in. But also we are gifting a lot of the material of the conferences that were online that you mentioned, Vanessa, of the last 2 years. A lot of the presentations, even some of the workshops, are also included. So it is an amazing bargain, a value for your money. And so you can find the online ticket of the Sovereign Goddess of Avalon conference still on our website, where you can also find the mystery ticket already for next year, which is going to be our Crone Goddess Conference, Lady of the Other World.
Oh, yes, of course, moving around the wheel, and I'll definitely be promoting that on the Facebook page when that comes up. But yeah, the mystery ticket for the Lady of Mystery. So since we first met, I've been astounded at your capacity to manifest goddess into the world in the work that you do, and yeah, I think it's fair to say that I'm quite in awe of the work that you do.
Bless you.
And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's really curious about how you came to be a priestess of the goddess of love and doing all the work that you do. So tell us a bit more about your journey and where did it begin?
Yeah, that's really a nice question. And you can answer that in so many different ways, because hindsight is such a funny thing, right? You can see connections, you can see the red thread of her presence. but that's because of where I am and who I am now. That was not necessarily always true then. However, I think there is something that I've come in with as a soul in this life that was a seeker and particularly connected to the ancient European goddess cultures. And so I have always loved history and was particularly interested in what I now know to be the goddess cultures, as well as Hellenistic Greek, which is actually patriarchic, and Roman culture. So I was really interested in the mythologies, in the sacred sites, in the ancient places. I wanted to visit them. I read about them. You know, I was an absolute addict to Rosemary Sutcliffe's historical novels, which are all set in the Celtic and Roman times, as a young teenager. And then when my own moon time started and I entered that part of your life, the red part of your life as a woman, where you learn to become a woman in connection to the moon and to the cycles. That for me was not actually a particular easy initiation, because I suffered from a lot of cramping at the time. But because it wasn't smooth, I had to look at, well, what is going on? I didn't want to go on medication, so I had to look at, like, say, diet. And I did start to synchronize with the phases of the moon to work with the energy in my body in a very basic way. I mean, that sounds far more sophisticated now when I say it like that than it was, okay? And then the other thing, the big thing in my my teenagehood was really my mother getting ill with cancer and then dying, 3 years of illness. And so her death when I was 19, this was very much part of the time of my explorer wanting to leave the nest, stretch her wings, and that confrontation of the impermanence. The death is around the corner for all of us all the time. In fact, death walks with us and is not, when it comes, actually something to be feared, but something to be welcomed. But of course, also this whole thing of stepping up into the next place in the mother line of your own family, of your own bloodline, at quite a young age, actually, plus us, the oldest of the 3 siblings at home. So this was part of my leaving the Netherlands and coming to Cornwall, actually, which is one of my heart's lands, where I connected deeply to the land. I worked on a farm, an organic farm, and it had tumuli on the top of the hill on the downs. And so I used to go up there under the moon and connect to the living dead ancestors beneath my feet in this, so there was this Celtic resonance there, and the land healed places in me, and the sacredness of the Earth Mother became very, very visceral for me. It was not just an idea, it became real. So from those things, I was already working a little bit with paganism, because if you are met by a life-changing event like the death of a close relative, then you are going to look into the whys of life. I was raised a Protestant, very liberal Protestant, and I'm extremely fortunate that some of my early teachers in spirituality, which were Protestant, were all about questioning. So this is like, I'm forever grateful to the good fortune I had to meet these teachers early on in my life. So the questioning, the seeking was cultivating the history, the lure of the ancient goddess cultures. And then actually going to the land where she was so alive, very different to the city in the Netherlands for me. So those things combined, I called myself a witch for a while. I was doing very much solitary ceremony, the seasonal recognition of things. And then I became, I'm passionate about sexuality and birth, in particular natural birth. So I became a doula, and that is really where I learned my priestess skills, really, how to feel energy, how to move energy, how to read energy, how to direct energy, how to be with energy. All those really deep priestess skills, particularly ceremonial priestess skills, I learned there as that kind of gatekeeper, that spiritual midwife place. And again, I'm still extremely passionate about natural active birth and our empowerment. I had my own spiritual goddess awakening while I was giving birth to my first child, my eldest daughter. And I had this weird experience that I can't really put into words, because the moment I do, it's not it. But I experienced myself as goddess, and at the same time, I was seeing her outside of me. So then I started looking specifically for goddess-based spirituality. Of course, I'd read Starhawk's Spiral Dance, which is like a yes, yes, yes. Every page is an orgasmic yes. When I was reading that at the time, you know. And I was drawn to Tantra. I was drawn to shamanism. So I had a shamanic teacher. I studied Tantra first through books, and then later on in my life, after I'd had all my 3 kids, I started actually training in Tantra specifically as well. So many different strands wove together. So after that spiritual awakening of goddess, it was like, okay, I need to find something. And I found in the Pagan Dawn magazine at the time, a tiny little advert for the Goddess Conference. And so I went. It's like one of those things, sometimes you have that in your life. You see something, you go, right, I've got to go. And so I followed that, because I then learned you do that, you know, if you get that, you follow that. And so I went as participant for the first 3 years. And then as priestess, I did the Priestess of Avalon training that was at the time a year long. And then a priestess at the conference, and then became ceremonialist for many, many years. I mean, you know, the Goddess Conference is this was the 27th year. And for like, I can't remember now, 24 years I've been involved with, and for 21 years or something like that as a priestess. So a long time now as a ceremonialist. So yeah, and that really honed my priestess skills and my connection to goddess in that first 1 year spiral of the Priestess of Avalon training. At the time, in the Beltane segment, we did a meditation to Rhiannon. And in that meditation, she basically kissed me and said, "You are mine." And I was like, what? So I did not choose her. She chose me. And for me, she resonates very much with goddesses like Astarte, who I had a very strong connection and felt devoted to, who is also sometimes known as Aphrodite, but really the lover goddesses of Europe, different goddesses. I mean, the goddess of Cerno of Cornwall, and I was deeply devotional to her way before I became a Priestess of Avalon. But that training brought me to Rhiannon. And so from then on, she has been my, what other traditions called my tutelage deity. And she has taught me her wheel and the houses of initiation and the shadow archetypes. And she has brought my skills in, of course, but through that, it is constantly deepening. It is so layered. The labyrinth of the wheel, which is the 3rd year, is the priestess, the labyrinth priestess. And the practices that are both tantric, shamanic, European Avalonian priestess tradition, mixed and manifesting through Rhiannon's mythology and what her mythological wisdom story actually can tell us and show us. So it's complex, and it's a difficult thing to say in a short time, which is why I've burbled on probably for far too long now. I shall take a breath.
I'm absolutely loving this story, Katinka. It's and I'm sure the listeners are as well. I think, you know, I get feedback because that's what people love to hear. You know, what because they often want to hear that someone else is where they are now. And what I'm hearing from your story is this insatiable curiosity, really, to continue questioning and continue learning and really become a scholar of not just spirituality and goddess, and but a scholar of yourself, to feel and sense and experience your responses and follow your intuition, and understand what's happening when these things kind of come through you. That's really what I'm sensing from your
Yes,
story.
and that is very much an ongoing thing. So I love going to Crete because of the memory of the goddess, European goddess, abundant, peace-loving tradition and culture that is there. equally temples of Malta, but also, you know, there are other temple sites that resonate, and we can tune into that resonance, and it changes us, and it informs us, and it inspires us. And for me, part of being a priestess of the goddess of love, a priestess of sacred sexuality, what does it mean? Is it just a title, a piece of paper I hang on my wall, or a nice flower crown I put on for a ceremony? For me, it's really that responsibility that you touch on, that goddess spirituality is about consciousness and awareness raising. And so the responsibility intensifies the longer you go on. I can't get away in myself with my shadow behavior, which I absolutely have, and which rules me at times because I'm a human being. And so that's kind of normal. But once you are aware of your shadow, you cannot, it is your responsibility, if you want to call yourself a goddess loving person, let alone a priestess of a goddess, to get trapped in that and to perpetuate it, or to not, once it has happened, because you can't always catch it before it happens. When it is happening, then you're doing all really, really, really well already, if you can catch it while it's going on. But certainly when it ends, when you're out of it, to not then make the amendments and to whatever it is, to apologize or to change your ways or do whatever. You can't get away with the unconscious parts of us that are trying to get our attention. Once you've done that shadow hunting journey, once you've brought them home to the heart to love, those little parts, and they will come up, because they will, but we can't let them rule them anymore. So the responsibility of what it means to be a priestess, I don't think people appreciate. And I did not appreciate when I started. I was just drawn irresistibly, you know, like, oh, anything goddess. I filled my house with goddess items, which my house is now chock-a-block with goddess items and goddess art. And you know, yes, in the temples of ancient Greece, for example, yeah, they have these beautiful love relationships, sacred union relationships, which of course is also in Tantra, between goddesses and gods. And so for me, there's something here that, so I also have God statues and God art, particularly the pagan gods, because this for me is part of the Priestess of Rhiannon, who loves the consort she chooses, who chooses her. There is this beautiful thing in the Queen and the King archetype, the sovereign one of the time of Mabon, which is a little teaching from the Wheel of Rhiannon, which is that on the inside, the queen, the feminine queen, in her full initiated healthy form, initiates the masculine into his king. And on the outer, the initiated king chooses only the queen. And so when you bring that into the relationship field in yourself and in your outer relationships, whatever gender you are or whatever sexual orientation you have, there is a dance between this energy that is very, very beautiful, but that asks you to take self-responsibility first and step up into that inner initiation. And this is not about, and then you will find your beloved for life. It can be, but that's actually not why we're doing this. This is really about this deeper layer of what it means to be a priestess of the goddess, or at least what it means for me, what I believe it to mean.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that nugget of wisdom. And it's also such a, I mean, it's a proper treat for me, spending this time with you as my teacher and having all these reminders of the trainings, because you're completely right. We as priestesses, it's our responsibility, and I know for me it's a daily practice to catch myself, catch my shadow behaviors, catch those unconscious places that are causing me to react rather than respond, and really sit with the discomfort of being human sometimes, but equally to sit with the joy of the joy and the pleasure of the human experience, and the connectedness with spirit, with the divine, and with other people as well. It's a delight. It's a joy.
It is, and it is that not being separated from her because she's within and all around, which is again one of these sayings. What the hell does that mean, you know? But I think for this time of the year, we're really looking at being kind to yourself, but not buying your own bullshit. Yeah, it's like really get real here, you know, like really be on it now with yourself. Yeah, I mean, I like buying my own bullshit because it lets me off the hook. But actually, I don't like letting myself off the hook. It doesn't feel good, actually. It has a price tag on it that I actually am not really willing to pay anymore, you know. So this is this reminder thing of how there's three layers, really, the three realms of the inner, the outer, and between the two, the intimate. And how we work with Goddess on an inner, on an outer, and on the intimate layers of our being and of our life. And you can have symbolic language around that. But really, this is part of this time of harvest and of really gathering what you're going to take forward and what are we going to store, because it will stay good. It will stay good so that we can have it in a few months' time or in a period later on in our life. And what do we let go of? What do we not carry with us? This is very much part of that. What is our inner, our outer, and between the two, the intimate relationship with Goddess? And what does that mean for each of us individually?
You mentioned there about realms, and and I'm reminded of one of the many, but one of the key messages of my experience the first year of this season, the first year of my priestess training at this season, meeting the Queen, and this idea of her having her realm, and patrolling the borders and knowing what's in there and what to let in and what to keep out. And I know we've kind of talked around the subject, but it would be lovely to talk more intentionally about how to live our Queen archetype, whether we're at this stage and age of our lives or whether we're kind of channeling that sovereign energy for ourselves at this time of year.
Yes, and what you mentioned there is right. It's about healthy boundaries, are authentic yes and no, which doesn't have to be defensive, but which is a healthy boundary. Yeah, that is a vital part of this archetype, really. And owning that can be a whole journey, a huge journey of meeting trauma responses within ourselves, of reintegrating parts of ourselves, of initiating parts of ourselves before we can even get there, right? So yeah, and the realm, the beautiful thing of the Queen, the sovereign one, the king, who owns their realm. And by that owning, it means that you know what is your creation, what is yours, but you also know your shadow, and you don't need to project that onto other people anymore and perpetuate some wounding triangle of victim, perpetrator, rescuer, you know. And then, so that's the owning. And then the realm is really anything you choose to take responsibility for, and responsibility being the freedom to respond, the ability to respond. So we are responsive, like you're saying, not reactive. We are responsive. Again, this often requires really training because most of us are very reactive, you know. So this is part of how we can enhance this archetype in ourselves. And often you need to be in a supportive circle or a supportive therapeutic setting to enhance these places so that you can step into that archetype. But it is a beautiful thing to really work on at this time of the year, because the energy of the land and of nature is helping us in this, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. And so one of the guiding questions that works both for the spring equinox and the autumn equinox that helps us in this is, what would love do? There are other questions for both the Queen and the Pathfinder Explorer who sits in the spring equinox archetypes, which I won't go into the full detail now. Come and do the training and I'll tell you. Yeah, so what would love do is it's Rhiannon's guiding question. And that can really help you in holding that healthy boundary and examining, where's this yes or this no actually coming from? Is it a conditioned thing? Is it actually my authentic choice? Am I in reaction? Or is it a healthy response? And then how your actions, or what you choose to do or not do, how you choose to speak or not speak, can flow from that inquiry, of which is really a ground of being, very earthy, because the Queen and the King, the sovereign one, is connected to the element of earth at the autumn equinox. So we're very much into grounding, grounding that sovereignty. What would love do? And you will do what it takes for that, and you will receive the treasures of what is due because of that question.
So we're coming right back round to where we started, with the themes of the season around discernment, and I think that's a beauty. It's such a beautiful question to start to go into that introspective place with, isn't it? And to examine our own actions, our own behaviors, our own patterns.
Yes, and generosity and discernment are the two balancing qualities of the Queen, really, from where our, yes, as you say, our inner journey, but then also our love in action on the outside manifests. So yeah, beautiful. Thanks, Vanessa. Gorgeous.
So I would love to know, and I'm sure the listeners would too, what you're planning to do to celebrate the Mabon season, and what tips you might have to share for others.
Well, I will actually be not here. I will be in Bratislava, or in Slovakia, over the actual days of the equinox, because I will be teaching. I will be offering my gifts, which is part of what we can do. So my suggestion, it's just a little suggestion, is to feel into, where can your generosity increase? Where can you be a little bit more generous and make, like John Lennon sings, make the world a little bit better rather than a little bit colder, as we're going into that colder half of the year. Where can your generosity be the gift to life? And that can have all sorts of forms. That can be promoting your friend's course on your network, or it can be giving to a food bank, or it can be helping your neighbor, your elderly neighbor, bring in her shopping or her firewood. I don't know. Think of what you want to do, and particularly feel into the difference, the places where you would gladly give, and the places where you go, you little, I'm not going to give you anything. Because that's the really interesting place to see if you can increase that generosity a little. So for me, there's something about notice and be grateful when you receive the generosity of others, because it softens the heart and it's treasure for the winter. And see if you can blossom your generosity. So I will be, not exactly ceremonially, but just as an offering to Rhiannon, I shall be gifting at the autumn equinox a little bit more. I shall be blossoming my generosity in various forms. And this is creative and fun to think about. And anybody can do that. You don't have to create an altar. You don't have to do something special. You don't even have to dress up. But if you want to, take a picture of yourself and share it with us, and how you are blossoming your generosity. It'd be lovely to hear from everybody. Right. And that will inspire us. So let's be that generous, sovereign one this autumn equinox.
How delicious. I love that. Absolutely love it. So we always end the episode with a short blessing, and I would love you to lead this for us, Katinka, if you would, before we say goodbye.
I would love that. So if maybe everybody can just take a couple of deep breaths, just maybe close your eyes so you can just hear the voice. Take a nice breath into your heart, and if you find that difficult to do, just feel the air in your nostrils for one breath. Really concentrate on the sensuality of the sensation of your breath, flowing in and out, because the breath is our constant giving and receiving that is happening in every breath. This is nothing that we actually don't know already. So, and then breathe the next breath into the heart and let the heart really receive. And open with the in-breath, and then let the heart really give with the out-breath. And as you keep breathing like that, May you receive the blessings of Rhiannon. Rhiannon Ipona, great queen, sovereign goddess of the mysteries of the land of Avalon, she who is the beloved consort of the horned god. May their union warm you. May you know your belonging to the great realm of love. May she gift you discernment and the treasures of wisdom. May she grow you through the dark months into your intention as love in action. The blessings of Rhiannon be with you this equinox. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Oh, that was beautiful. I'm really feeling that coming into me now. Thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, darling.
Well, our time together is at an end. It's been, I can't think of any more words to express the delight, the honour, the privilege it's been to spend this time with you, and to be able to share your wisdom, your knowledge, your passion, your love for this work that you do with all the people who listen. So thank you so much for being with me, Katinka.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
So it's time to say farewell. So until the next time, thank you for listening.